The sails billow in the wind as the ship rounds the corner and begins to head north towards home. Far above, the seagulls scream as they dive through the air, searching for fish trying to hide from them in the endless waters. The smell of salt lashes against the nose and the tongue as the breeze picks up again. It's 1677. You and your crewmates have been out fishing for the entire day, trying to feed your families living in a small village on one of the outlying Greek islands. The catch has been good today, and you can already picture the smiling faces of the villagers as the ship strains against the wind and begins to sail towards home. You turn your head, noticing something emerging from the sea next to the ship, white froth spinning through the air as it rises out of the water. You shrug it off at first, but that feeling of calm vanishes like a puddle on a warm rock as the form rises further and resolves itself into a human being. A woman. However, this is no ordinary woman, if you needed any more evidence than the fact that she just rose out of the water in the middle of the sea. A flash of light confirms your suspicions, the glint of fish scales rippling up her waist. A mermaid. All around you, you can hear feet hitting the deck with increasing frequency as your shipmates begin to spot the apparition and run around in panic. The creature has been swimming towards the boat and fixes your frenzied crewmates with a benign smile. She opens her mouth and her ghostly voice drifts across the ship, fixing men in place wherever they happen to be. The question that floats along the deck is whether Alexander the Great lives. That question. There had been legends among the villagers that there was some sort of question asked by this creature of the deep. Behind you, a young lad of 17 whispers to the man standing next to him. She doesn't know? You feel a chill running down your spine. Whatever this boy is about to say, you know that this isn't what the creature wants. Your fears are confirmed when he speaks up. Alexander the Great? He died centuries ago. Be about 2,000 years now, wouldn't it? His question is directed at another sailor next to him, who is rooted to the spot and staring at the mermaid, his face white. The creature's mood changes instantly, the friendly smile evaporating and being replaced with a furious grimace. The mermaid howls in grief and rage and begins sweeping her hands and hair in an arc around her in the water, her tears mixing with the ocean. All around you, the sky begins to darken and storm clouds gather. Waves appear, lashing against the ship. The creature thrashes its hands about once more, and that is the last thing you hear above the water before the ship breaks in two with a mighty crunch. Seawater floods into the boat and men are thrown into the sea. You attempt to hurl yourself onto a plank of the ship, not knowing if you succeeded before the spider's web of unconsciousness begins to steal across your vision. Before both darkness and the waves envelop your mind, the last thing you hear is the stifled sobs of the mermaid, muffled with the water all around you. Amidst the screams, a fishtail dives back into the water. Hello everyone, and welcome to After Alexander. Echoes of Alexander, Episode 3, The Mermaid of Aegeus. The above fictional dramatization should have given you a hint of what we're going to be talking about in this episode of Echoes of Alexander, namely a legend surrounding Alexander the Great. In fact, we're going to be returning to someone we've met before on this show, Thessalonica, Alexander's paternal half-sister through Philip II. I should mention that the mermaid's actions throughout the dramatization are an average, as we'll see below. Moreover, the time selected is arbitrary. I only picked 1677 as the year because it was a nice round 2,000 years since Alexander's death. With that said, on with the story. Who is Thessalonica again? Thessalonica is Alexander the Great's paternal half-sister. Most of my sources agree that she was born in either 352 or 353, which would have been about 3 to 4 years after her half-brother Alexander. Supposedly, she was born the same day as her father's victory at the Battle of the Crocus Fields, again in either 353 or 352. This battle saw his rule over Thessaly solidified and was a watershed moment in his rise to supremacy over Greece. As a result, her father named her Thessalonica, which means victory in Thessaly. Thessalonica's mother was Nicesipolis, either a concubine or a wife to Philip II and potentially a noblewoman. However, she died soon after her daughter's birth, and Thessalonica appears to have been brought up by Olympias, her stepmother and the mother to both Alexander the Great and Cleopatra. As we covered in previous episodes, Thessalonica eventually married Cassander and gave birth to 3 sons, Philip, Alexander and Antipater. Plutarch records that Antipater was the second son. Philip IV succeeded his father as king of Macedon, but died of wasting in 297 BCE. Initially, the plan was that Antipater should have succeeded to sole power, but Thessalonica demanded that power be shared between Antipater II and Alexander V. Plutarch records that Antipater killed his mother and ousted Alexander. The reason for this? Well, Justinus notes that she seems to have favoured Alexander over Antipater. Both Justinus and Plutarch then go on to recount Alexander V's appeal to Demetrius I Poliorcetes, which led to the events unfolding in Macedon that we've seen in previous episodes. This is the point at which we're going to move away from the historical narrative and into the myth. The story goes that Alexander the Great one day summons magicians to his court with the aim of gaining immortality, given that he already has everything else. The magicians try to dissuade him at first, given how impossible the task seems, but the headstrong Alexander of the story is convinced of his own greatness and persists. Ultimately, one of the magicians tells him that the water of immortality is needed to accomplish this, which is protected by mountains which clash against each other to crush adventurers and a dragon. So, naturally, Alexander the Great sets off to find it. Unlike what you'd expect from such an adventure, he actually manages to retrieve this water, 1 vial of it to be exact. This story is one of 20 in the book Folk Tales from Greece, A Treasury of Delights by Christodoula Mitakidou, Anthony Elmana and Sula Mitakidou. In the version they recount, Thessalonica subsequently finds the vial after Alexander the Great leaves it on a table and forgets about it, using its water to wash her hair and drinking from it. After he finds out about this, Alexander curses his half-sister to turn into a mermaid and travel across the oceans for all eternity without respite, despite her repenting of having used up the water. A second version is that Alexander washed his sister's hair in the water himself, although I have no idea why he would have done this after all the effort he'd gone through to obtain it. Anyway, Alexander dies in this version, and Thessalonica tries to kill herself by jumping into the sea and attempting to drown. It is at this point that she turns into a mermaid instead. A minor variation in terms of how Alexander gets hold of the water is that Thessalonica is the one to find it and gives it to Alexander. However, he then gives it back to her instead. Again, this is just my take on it, but it would seem odd given his desire to get hold of it in the first place. Another version holds that Thessalonica ingests it accidentally and she's transformed into a mermaid due to sorrow. Presumably this is because of her brother's death like the other versions, but my source for this version doesn't say specifically. Finally, the Royal Museum's Greenwich holds that Thessalonica became a mermaid after she died. As you can tell, there are a lot of variations of the story, as there presumably are with most myths. However it happens though, Thessalonica ultimately ends up as a mermaid and in the ocean. She either travels the world or stays within the Aegean Sea, lying between Greece and western Anatolia, depending on the source you look at. In case you're wondering, the Aegean is named after Aegeus, father of Theseus, he of the Minotaur fame, hence the title of this episode. Anyway, the story goes that whenever she encounters a ship, she asks the question I mentioned at the start of this episode, namely whether or not her half-brother Alexander the Great is still alive. As you will have gathered, there is only one answer you really want to be giving to this. The right answer is that Alexander is still alive and prospering as the sovereign over the world. If this happens, Folktales from Greece says that she will cause the wind to abate and the waves to vanish, accompanying the ship to its destination while playing her harp and singing. The authors recount that, if people in Greece hear someone singing something new, it is commonly attributed to Thessalonica and her harp-playing skills. Alternatively, she simply leaves and allows the ship to finish its journey without incident. The problems start if someone who doesn't know about her, and the consequences of their actions, tells her that Alexander is long dead. If this happens, she will cause the ship to sink, although how this happens and what the details are varies from telling to telling. Folktales from Greece maintains that she moves her hair and hands in order to create waves which will bring the ship down. Alternatively, she may apparently turn into a gorgon like Medusa, or else summon a storm. The storm may apparently also have arisen from her tears of grief. However it happens, Thessalonica's aim becomes to destroy the ship and all its occupants if this incorrect answer is given. So, that's the myth of Thessalonica the Mermaid. This is a rather different impact of the life of Alexander the Great as opposed to the two we've studied already in this mini-series. However, it's certainly an impact of Alexander's life. Without him and his half-sister Thessalonica being in the unique positions of prominence they were thanks to Alexander's conquest and prestige, it seems to me that the myth would either not have come into existence at all, or would have been far less widespread. That's where we'll leave it for today. Thank you all for listening. You can contact us at the show's email address for any questions or comments. Until next time, have a great week, everyone.